Keir Starmer's set to meet with US finance CEOs. He's on a trip to New York. This, of course, after the gathering in Liverpool of the party conference. The Prime Minister has told the press in New York that more foreign investment is crucial to growing the British economy. But after quite a detail-light Labour Party conference, business is watching for the budget. There's also the Global Investment Summit in just 18 days' time. Joining us now to discuss this, I'm pleased to say, is the Lord Mayor of the City of London, Michael Mainelli. A very warm welcome to Bloomberg Radio. Good morning.
And good morning to you. It's great to be back at Bloomberg.
Super. So, in terms of what you're expecting from the Chancellor, the Lloyds of London chairman told me the Chancellor has 6 weeks to win over investors. How do you think she can do that now?
Well, I think the Chancellor has more than 6 weeks. Investors are taking very much a long-term view. I've spent nearly 100 days abroad this year, traveling to about 25 countries, and I think investors are relieved. In fact, they were relieved by the previous government. We saw a lot more stability coming in. This government has exhibited a real understanding that stability is needed. That's clearly political stability, but it is also stability and certainty, and the messages that they're projecting are really, in my opinion, quite good.
Does the concern come in? You must have had this conversation as well around the proposals, potential proposals, and we'll see if that comes through in the budget, of course, at the end of October, around, for example, increasing taxes on capital gains, the shared or carried interest tax proposals, wealth taxes potentially as well in the mix, all of those being voiced, at least being suggested. And we've done our own reporting on high net worth individuals, wealthy business owners looking to relocate as a result of this. There is that caution, there is that concern. Are you hearing that as well?
We're always hearing that, but we were hearing that about the previous governments as well.
Has it increased? I mean, has it stepped up?
No, I don't believe it has increased. But if you were to ask me for our personal ask from the budget, it is very much the first one would be a stable, simplified tax regime even. And so a lot of this discussion hopefully will calm down after we see the shape of the budget. After that, we're quite interested in some things to do with particularly digital verification, which we think might even be wildly misunderestimated in terms of the amount of gross benefit it might give to the economy. That's an exciting one for us. And finally, we'd also like some clarity on net zero, particularly, again, more stability there on the net zero policy. Those would probably be our three biggest asks.
Is there a bit of mistiming, though? I mean, we're also looking ahead to the investment summit that's going to be held before the budget, which doesn't kind of make sense to most people because we're waiting for the budget.
I think you're right. It probably makes a little bit. There's probably some logical sequence that the budget is secured and the investors come. But one of the things about Britain is we do have an annual budget cycle. And that annual budget cycle, compared to many other countries, exhibits much more fluctuation and volatility. So investors will be expecting that next year there'll be another budget cycle and another. I think it's important that Labour sets out that it is very much seeking global investment. Last year I was at Hampton Court. I was surprised at how positive it was. And even then we were picking up the indications of concerns over utilities, in particular water. So global investors are savvy. They're not waiting on this month or this week's or this day's announcement.
Okay, has there been a change? We're about 85 days into the administration. Has there been a material change in terms of the evidence of investment coming into Britain as a result of this new administration? Because that really is one of the key tests for Starmer and Reeves.
I'd completely agree with you. No, there has been no indication that I've seen of change, but there's no indication of the decrease as much as there might be an increase. And let's be candid, 2 and a bit months into an administration, this is actually a good sign. Capital flight is not going out. Capital flight is not occurring.
But we need to see those commitments, don't we? I mean, we need to see investors coming through with some big ticket investments, and I understand. I hear you. It's going to take time. Is your sense that at least that is coming, and which sectors are investors eyeing up? What is looking like the kind of the biggest opportunity at this point?
Right. The large-scale investors that I've met, so the wealth funds, some of the larger asset managers, believe it or not, Chinese pensions, have an intense interest in the UK. Over decades, the UK has been proven to be one of the most stable regimes, perhaps even more stable in many ways than direct investment, say, in a US state or something like that. It's actually a very, very good, stable regime, particularly during conflict, particularly during geopolitical uncertainty of any form. So They're always interested in the UK, and this has increased over the last 2 years. What I'm seeing is people constantly grilling me, where's the brochure? What can I pick up? And of course, they have to wait just that little bit of time until we see what these projects are. Remember, we've cancelled quite a few large-scale investment projects.
So what is the brochure for the big infrastructure projects that Britain is going to do? And that's what foreign investors are telling you they want to see?
Definitely.
But why is it not coming then from the new setup? We've set up, this new government has set up 2 new bodies, so the National Wealth Fund and GB Energy. I mean, why are they not printing those brochures, glossy ones, please?
I'm sure they're preparing them for the 14th. It's 2.5 months in. I personally, you've got to give them a bit of slack. You've hit the ground on an unexpected election, and suddenly the next day you're in office. The next day, international investors are saying, we saw that some of these major projects are cancelled. What's in your chart? And they're saying, we're going to present them on the 14th. I actually think that's pretty sensible.
You're being very generous to the current Labour government. They knew they were going to be in power about 12 months before the election. The doom and gloom, the rhetoric from Starmer, the rhetoric from Rachel Reeves. I mean, we've gone from the kind of heady hyperbole of Boris Johnson to the doom and gloom of this Labour Party would be the critique. Is that weighing on some of these decisions that you're speaking about?
Well, personally, I see that as political theatre. Recall that the previous government came in and said we were left a note saying the cupboard's bare, if you remember that. So that's exactly what happened on the previous administration. In business, we all know the 3-envelope joke. You get 3 envelopes. The first one is blame your predecessor. The second one is blame your predecessor. And the third is write out 3 envelopes. So you've got to exercise that envelope strategy right up front. You couldn't have done this in February because they said, well, you've been in administration for 6 months. So, stop blaming the government.
Michael, you're a global citizen. You mentioned 100 days abroad just this year. I'm told you have 4 nationalities, educated across the US, Britain, Ireland, and you've eloquently put the case, and the Lord Mayor always has to put the case for Britain abroad, which is fantastic. Do you think that Britain needs to reckon with its attitudes towards migration? We are post-Brexit, and this is still a huge issue. It comes up again and again when I speak to the CBI or anybody else. It's about skills. It's about attracting that international person to the UK.
Agreed. Over 14 centuries, the corporation has always focused on 4 things. Defense and security. Nobody brings money to a war zone. Free and open trade. Very much the rule of law in its widest sense. And access to skills and talent. And we cannot say we have the best British lawyer or the best British scientist. We have to have the best scientists for the projects that we're trying to do, which are global solutions. That doesn't mean unlimited migration. And I'd like us to focus a lot more on access to skills and talent in terms of visiting business visas, working visas, slick procedures.
So what is the one thing that Reeves and Starmer's government could do to make those visas better?
Probably for me, the biggest thing is more stability on the education front. Again, we're looking to the long term. That's what we do in the corporation. And when you look to the long term, it's a couple of years that students get afterwards where they're building up their proto-networks. You're building up your network as a lawyer, and suddenly you're back in Busan, and somebody says, do you know an accountant in London? Yeah, it's funny. I used to room with them, or I used to take drinks with them. Those proto-networks are the biggest piece of soft power for Britain, and as I travel around the world, we are greeted. I went to Toronto just 2 weeks ago, and we had 85 people, the majority of whom had studied in Britain, cheering the Lord Mayor, cheering Britain, cheering London, cheering the City of London. And that's the sort of attitude we need. So it's that long-term view of making sure those skills and talents come in. That doesn't mean migration.